So welcome everybody to our panel about consumer brand relationships of track 8. So our program today, firstly, you're going to have the presentation of Professor Marc Fetscherin, that is one of authority in the field, one of the most important professors regarding this field. Then we're going to have questions and answers with participants. We're going to talk with Professor Fetscherin about this presentation, and then Professor Paulo Baptista from PUCPR and Professor Marc Ferreira dos Santos of Universidad La Sabana. We're going to present the scenario of consumer brand relationships in Brazil and opportunities to publish and produce research. Thank you very much, and I invite Professor Fetscherin to talk with us and do his presentation.
Okay. Well, let me see. Has been a while since, let me see. All right. So are you able to see my presentation, everyone? Yes. Wonderful. So first of all, thank you very, very much for inviting me. I feel very honored that you're thinking about me and inviting me and talk a little bit about brand relationships, which is my passion. And so I want to thank the organizers, all of the organizers, having invited me for this speech, as well as everybody who is present. And please send me any questions or comments you have about that. So my understanding is I have about till what is it? I think 11:20, so 30 minutes. So I cannot do everything, but I try to start with a big picture and then go into 2 or 3 topics. One will be brand love, one will be brand hate, and then a third one would be brand forgiveness. Certain things I might go a little bit fast. I get it. We can do that in a Q&A, or you can send me then an email, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you have. So if that's okay with you. Before that, let's see, here we go. So I have been doing a little bit that research for some time, I think close to now, not yet 2 decades, but some time. And, the fruit of that labor resulted in a couple of books, some with Kevin Keller, Susan Fournier, who started that field actually close to 3 decades ago. So there's some kind of evolution going on about that. I did a couple of special issues, and I actually do next month organize a conference about that, the 7th one, which that's where I met Sid and also some of you guys, I think in Portugal, when I hold that. So, so why are we here? So we're here because obviously we are all consumers to some extent, and consume certain brands, and there's some kind of relationship we have with them. Some we are indifferent, some we love totally, and some we say we never want to see them again, consume them or anything. And so I'm really interested in that middle part. We've seen those things, I'm sure, especially in Brazil, right? It's some, are very loyalist, paint their faces, right? So that's really, related to really passion and loyalty and love. And so there's a lot of emotions going on, with looking at those things on one hand, but obviously we have things like that, on the other hand, people are really upset about certain brands. And this is just, here, I just looked up that I hate Apple. So there are multiple Facebook sites. This one just alone has like 20,000 people, hating Apple. So it's just interesting to look at what motivates that passionate feeling of, positive or negative. And some, like me, sometimes I go to McDonald's, so I'm loving it for like a minute or 2, and then I feel guilty of eating burger, and I don't say never again. And so, some might have some kind of weird relationship, right? Where we go up and down. So that's just, as an example. So here's the thing, right? When you look at branding, and the way actually we all make decisions, there is a concept called the empathy map, which basically looks at internal aspects, the way we think and feel, right, of certain brands or certain people. And the way we think and feel will be articulated in the way we either say or do things, right? So I took this concept from my last book and tried to apply it to branding, where say, you know, there's so many concepts in branding which relate to thinking. There are a lot of concepts relate to feeling and, you know, to saying and doing. And actually, so this is the, I won't go through, this is I know a big graph, and, you know, you can buy my work or I can send you a copy. But what is interesting is, right, so the way we think here, right, that's basically what we can call the share of mind, right? It's more the rational component of, you know, decision making. And obviously we all have a mixture of feelings too, right, with the share of heart, right, the way we feel. And so the different degrees of thinking about brands, you know, from I'm aware of a brand to, you know, I'm familiar with the brand and experience it, as well as in feeling, you know, it goes from mild emotions, some like brand satisfaction, to, you know, extreme, more deep emotions like brand love. The same thing is negatively, in a sense of we might be indifferent of a brand or dislike it, to very, very strong emotion of I hate this brand, right? I want to hurt this brand. I want to write blogs. And so the way those two intrapersonal aspects work will then act of what we say or do, right? So whether we will complain to friends or to family or on social media, or positively, we write positive reviews, right? So there's a whole bunch of overview, and I will not go through all of that. It's too much, but the point is I try to make a framework which is structured in a way which outlines how all these concepts relate to each other. And so I will just focus on those two ones. And if you're interested in how to measure and the theories behind each of those concepts, you know, shoot me an email or get my book, and, you know, everything behind, there's a lot of theory and explanation of how to look at those. And so let me see if I can show. So brand love, right, this is one big topic. So obviously people, you know, some people are really obsessed, you know, make even tattoos about their favorite brand, right? And so there was a paper I wrote, as the overall theory behind was, oh, brand love is the same as the love to people, right? In a certain way, based on Sternberg theory of love, they say, oh, you know, we can apply interpersonal love to brand love, and we can explain that. And so while I actually did some papers using that framework, I was really interested to say, well, is it really that type of love, or is there something else which could explain even better that relationship in terms of, you know, we act, because the brand doesn't really speak back to us. I mean, it does some, but, you know, is it the same? So there's a concept. So first of all, as you know, there's so many different dimensions of brand love. You know, it's seen as relationship partners, and I think the most important here is, right, most papers, and again, I use that framework too from Sternberg theory of love, right, apply this in the branding context. I'm not saying this is wrong, but I was interested, is there another possible theory could explain this relationship? And so I came across actually another concept, which is called parasocial love, right? So parasocial love is more a one-dimensional love we have with either an object or a person. So let's say you have your favorite TV show or TV host or any person, right? They don't really talk to us, but we feel we know them, right? If you watch your favorite series in TV, I don't know which one you have, but you get emotionally, some positively or negative, affected by that. Or actors, right? You love movies from that actor or actress. So, but they don't really talk to us back. And so one concept is, well, we could actually use that concept of parasocial love to describe the relationship we have with brands. And there were actually two good papers which do give some clues, right? One is Wang, who, you know, says that it's more unidirectional. And then Jan actually looked at the prefrontal cortex of brains and looked at it's actually different when we think about people and brands, right? So there's biological reason and psychological reason, which could at least give clues that the relationship we have with brands is less based on theory of interpersonal relationship, but more maybe based on parasocial. So that was the little paper we did a while ago. And so I don't go into the statistics, okay? We don't have time for that. You're welcome to, you know, here is the paper, right? You can download it or I can send you a copy. Happy to do that. But the bottom line was we compared both law of relationships, right? We assessed interpersonal relationship and we assessed parasocial relationship and looked the explanation power of both to brand law to make a comparison between the two models. And that's what you see here in the screenshot. And then we did that actually in 2 countries while, you know, just to test that, you know, is this consistent across some other countries? And so our results actually showed that using the parasocial love concept and items to measure brand love yielded to better and stronger results than using interpersonal, the interpersonal love items. Obviously, what hasn't been really done, so if you want to do research, is test that model in multiple countries. You know, I think it would be great to look into culture and the influence, because love is culturally grounded. The way we use the word love, the way we express love, the way it is assessed. So that was one of the first paper. Do you have any questions, or do you hear me well? All good?
Perfect.
Marc.
All right. Thank you. Well, then I go to the next one. So that was one paper. Again, I think if you want to do research, apply this to Brazil, apply this to other countries in South America, extend the model. You know, I think there are a lot of good avenues to improve, and you know, I think we just scratched the surface of that concept. Not much has been done in that respect of, you know, comparing that. So that was one paper. Another paper then was, well, does really love, brand love, right, lead to high profits? Like everybody talks about brand love and it's important, but does it seriously lead to high profits, right? What's there? So I had the honor and pleasure to work with Ryan Barker, who owns Vera Brand Management. Vera Brand Management is a platform which assessed every week 20,000 consumers and their relationship. So every week, so it's over 1 million a year. Every week they assess the feeling of love towards brands and a cycle of love. And then in terms of their willingness to, you know, in terms of love for product, price, place, promotion, people. They have a huge platform. And so I reached out to them, you know, 7-8 years ago, say, well, you have this great platform, but can you actually show, or is there empirical evidence that love leads to more profit? So that led to this project. And what they say is they argue there are 5 stages of, you know, love relationships, right? The first one is like it's new exciting stage. So whether it's a new brand, a new product brand launched, right? So it doesn't need to be a corporate brand. It can be a product brand level. People might be new and exciting. And this excitement, right, goes in a stage of like dating, in a sense of, oh, I'm really loving this new brand or this new car models. You know, think about EV car models now, they all throw in the market, those brands. So, which means dating is defined by them that future cash flows are bigger than the current cash flows, right? So expected future cash flow. So that means they're in a positive trajectory. So which will be here, right? And then the next stage of that would be, okay, so that means then it's really love. That means like the future cash flow and the current cash flow in terms of, you know, excitement and all those things are, you know, pretty much the same. So that's the maximum you can attain in terms of current and future behavior. There are brands, people get bored, right? They don't really want to go. They maybe consume it right now, but they're not exciting anymore. People don't spend as much money as they want. They don't visit them so frequently. So that goes into boring one, which means they still go today, but they don't really intend to go many more if they don't change, whether it's the product or placement or, you know, their offerings. And then some, you know, what they call brand divorce, in the sense of stop going there, right? Say, okay, I don't go anymore in that store, or I don't gonna buy anymore that brand because, you know, for different reasons. And so they had those stages. And so every brand has a BERA score, which classifies them into those 5 categories. And the question we then asked is, okay, let's look at all the brands. Let's look at all the brands here who have a high BERA score of love and compare them to those who have lower scores, right? Either here or here, right? So we group them and say, okay, how do they perform? And then what's the total shareholder return of those corporations which are in those groups? And so, we classified all those brands in the database, and these are the low BERA score, the one which are either in dating, right, or in boredom or divorce, and then those who are above average, which means have the highest love score in the middle. And then also we compared those against all companies in the SP 500 as an index reference point. And what we saw is the total return, shareholder return, is significantly higher of those who have a high BERA score, so which are in the love in the middle, compared to the overall industry. But more interestingly, those who score low, so who are in the divorce and boresome scores, like the lowest scores, they really perform badly. So one is a positive effect that love does lead to high profit, but almost worse is not loved leads to really lower performance indicator. And that actually will lead me now to the next topic, which is brand hate, right? So what could explain that this here is so much lower than this one here of love, right? So this is basically hate or negative emotions, and this is more positive emotions. So that led actually to the research, hold on, that really sparked my interest then to go and researching negative emotions, which, you know, is called brand hate, right? And until like 2008 or 9, 10, there was really not much research at all about brand hate. Everybody was looking about love and like and all the positive emotions, but there was literally nothing really out there about the negative emotions. And that was surprising, because negative emotions can have such a deeper, more impact on us than positive, right? Studies have shown, and this is called in psychology the negativity bias. right? Negativity bias means an equal negative event affects us more than an equal positive event. Let's say if you lose $10, you know, this makes you not as happy as if you lose $10, which makes you more upset, right? There's the same thing. If somebody gives you a compliment, it doesn't make you equally happy as if somebody critiques you, which makes you more negatively unhappy. So generally speaking, from the biological and psychological point of view, it actually has a big impact, which could explain why here the below average, this one here is so much lower than maybe this one here. We did not test that, but that could be one explanation, and it would definitely be interesting to research that more, the negativity bias on, you know, financial performance of brands, for example. So anyway, so this brings me now to the second part, which is hate. So that was a paper I did then about brand hate, where we looked at what are the main drivers of brand hate, right? And what are the main outcomes? And so that was a study done with some friends in Europe. And because again, if you look at all the research on up till 2010, 11, especially empirical research, it was until our paper, nobody really did empirical research about brand hate, right? Everybody was just on the positive, and as you can see here, all those concepts, which are great. But again, three things. One, there is what we call the negativity bias. Psychologically, we weight more negative events than positive. A lot of research showed that people at least hate one brand, you know, or extremely dislike. So it is present. And also from a biological point of view, the way it impacts our brain, again, shows that it triggers stronger physical reactions than positive ones. So that led us to be interested into that topic. So there are a couple of things. One is it's a very good Harvard Business Review article, which is called Brand Polarization. That graph here is not from there. That's from our empirical studies. But brand polarization means the most loved brands have also the most haters, which makes sense, right? Everybody knows Apple and Walmart, and they have, especially Apple, a lot of lovers, but also they have a lot of haters. And the example I gave at the beginning with the Facebook group page shows that, right? And so that's just one thing. And the multiple studies about brand hate we did confirms this over and over, that, you know, the most loved brands are the hated ones. So it's probably a topic worth exploring. So what we did is through a long literature review and so forth, we classified 3 drivers of hate, right? Why people hate or dislike a brand. One is related to what we call negative past experience, basically brand dissatisfaction, right? You're not happy with a brand and it upsets you, whether you dislike it or hate it, but it's just, you know, you had a bad experience with it, right? Your car breaks constantly down, or they don't deliver on time, or I don't know what the reason it is, but there are many reasons people don't like that, right? A second one is related to what we call symbolic incongruency, meaning the image of the brand does not project to our self-image, right? So, you know, I don't like this brand because they, you know, do animal testing or other things. It's just the image of the brand is not congruent with my self-image. As well as the same thing, people like to buy brands which extend themselves, right? Which elevates their image or gives an image they want to project. So in this way, in the negative way, you know, might be do that. The last one we call ideological incompatibility is basically corporate wrongdoing, right? Corporate wrongdoing in the sense of this company is polluting the planet, this company is it's doing illegal acts, is immoral, is unethical, is hiring children, like any of those ideological discussions, right, which might drive, you know, our feelings towards a brand. And then we just, at that time, and again, if you want to do research, you know, it would be interesting to have much more. At that time, we only took 3 outcome variables. Since that paper, many papers came out looking at 5, 6 different outcomes, but that was the first mainly looking at, you know, the drivers and outcomes. What was interesting is that actually those 2 here, which are not really product performance related, right, more corporate related, drive actually far more hate than the past experience. The second important is this one here, companies can, in the short term, easily fix, right? You have a bad, you know, your call center waiting time is too long, you can hire people, you can change this fast. The problem here, you can sometimes not change that in the short term. And some of them here, you might not even be able to change. If you think about BP, you know, about other, let's say, oil companies, they cannot change who they are, right? So these are the things which are much more tough to change, but they really impact the way we feel about them. And then we looked at outcomes, you know, are you avoiding the brand or switching? Are you talking negatively? And are you trying to retaliate about this, meaning trying to use resources of the brand, such as, you know, going in a store and just complaining, writing them letters so it costs them to respond, just some kind of retaliation behavior. So that was our main model. We started. Since then, it has become actually the 2nd most cited paper on brand hate, next to Lisa Santanello's paper. It has been expanded more. Not really as the driver, but in the outcomes. And it has been tested across different cultures. So again, here, if you want to do research, apply this, expand this, apply it in the, you know, Brazilian context, maybe across different industries. So I think there's a lot of still avenues of research to look at and to explore. This brings me to the last one of my speech. So I was thinking, right, so you have love and you have hate, and we all, in our personal life, I'm sure you had relationships with people where you really liked and loved them, and maybe now your feeling is not as positive as it used to be. And the question is there a concept or construct, an emotion, which can repair this damage, right? And so this came actually to the idea of forgiveness. You know, are people, you know, able to forgive? To what extent? So looking at all those brand haters, right, is the way, what can brands do to maybe restore a relationship, or can they not? And coming back here, the question is, how are they able to restore it here? Which one of those 3 drivers they might need to change so they can restore the hate to maybe a liking or loving? That was the question. So we looked at, so that's another paper I wrote, looking at that. And so first of all, what was interesting when you do the research about forgiveness, right? Forgiveness has mostly been discussed, like 98%, in theology, philosophy, and psychology. There's almost nothing in business until a few years ago. Most papers, and this is just the show. So first of all, forgiveness overall in all the disciplines, right? When we went to the Web of Science and searched for papers which had in the title or in the abstract the starting of the word forgiveness. We didn't write forgiveness. We wrote forgive as if F-O-R-G, to keep it open to forgive, forgiveness, forgiving, like all the combinations. We found 1,200 articles, a little bit over, from 2,000 in 600 journals, right? So it's all over the place and not really in business. what's interesting is only for about 20 years, this entire concept really starting to take off. And that was interesting. And again, in business, hardly anything. There are not much papers out there. So that was interesting. And then they said, well, what is forgiveness, right? So this is just the motivation why, right? So we looked at love and hate. And so many companies do product failures, right? They're brand, what we call brand transgression. And so, you know, what's the role of forgiveness within those relationships? And so what we saw is there are actually three types of forgiveness. Self-forgiveness, can I forgive myself, right? Can I forgive a situation, and can I forgive others? And so we were interested here in the relationship others, meaning the brand, right? So what we know again is people might like, love, or be satisfied with a brand. Something happened with the brand. This is the driver of brand hate, right? Either the brand dissatisfaction with the brand, ideological incompatibility, or incongruency of image, right? Something happened, and now we have some kind of negative feelings. And the question is, can we come back here, and to what extent? So we did a survey, consumers, and so forth, right? I don't gonna go into that. I think much more interesting is this. So after our empirical study, the only one done at that time, we saw that what is interesting is overall of the, you know, representative US sample of, you know, a couple of hundred people, about half are actually unlikely or very unlikely to forgive, right? So that's an insight where I say, okay, you know, we lost those. However, about a third are willing, are likely or very likely to forgive under certain circumstances. So that was something, okay, there's good news, right? So a third I can save, the rest, I don't know, or will, you know, we have to let it go. But there is an opportunity to restore relationships. What we also saw was the more severe the transgression, so the more they feel it was transgression in any of the three, right, the less likely. But what was also interesting, looking at the three drivers of brand hate, which we assessed, right? So negative past experience in this case had the biggest impact. Unlike with brand hate was, okay, that's actually good news, right? Means if you are unhappy with a brand right now, you are more likely to forgive that if they fix that. So that's the easiest to fix, which is actually consistent with the brand hate findings, meaning while it is the least important driver, it's the one we can control the most and the one consumers might be most likely to forgive. Meaning, if they think you do corporate wrongdoing, which is this one, it's very hard to forgive that, right? If they think you pollute the planet, you cannot really change that opinion, so people will not really forgive that, right? Except you change who you are. And so now we try to visualize this. These are my last two slides, right? So we asked them, how did you feel in the past about this brand before the transgression, right? Before something happened, right? How did you feel? And so as you can see, some loved the brand, some liked it. So this is important here, right? Some were neutral, and then some already before any brand transgression happened, right? Before anything happened, some people just dislike a brand without having purchased it, right? What was then, okay, how do you feel today, right? And today, obviously, the survey asked, you know, do you have a brand you dislike? Many dislike it, many hate it, right? So the question was, well, how would you feel about in the future if they would address whatever you don't like? Which is here. And what's interesting is, right, hate stays basically hate, right? If you're here, whether you hate the brand, the maximum you can go from current hate, there's no love coming back. The maximum you can go is to, you might at best like a brand. No one in the survey whether they say the current feeling is neutral or dislike is going more than like. Meaning, you know, once you might have loved the brand here and you don't like it today, there's never love coming back. So the best companies can attain is brand liking, which makes sense, right? It's like with people. Most people, once you dislike, you know, hate, you don't dislike. So I know my time is up. This is my last slide. Let me see. And so that's the same thing, right? How likely are you to forgive? The feeling of now versus forgiveness. And the point is, many people who hate the brand are not willing to forgive, right? So that's forgiveness and the willingness to forgive. And as you can see, I think there's a tiny fraction of people who are likely to forgive. But if you hate the brand, you're most likely they will never forgive you. However, if you dislike a brand, there is an opportunity here, right, that you will forgive to some extent, or you might be neutral. So I know that was a lot of things in the short period of time, but I want to thank you everyone for listening, and I'm open to questions. I don't know if I should keep the PowerPoint open or not. Let me know. Student Paulo, back to you.
I believe that you can stop sharing your slides so we can see everybody's face. Okay, so thanks a lot, Marc. Very interesting concepts. Brand relationship is very interesting subject, and brand hate and brand love, they are constructs that are very important in marketing. So I would like to open for questions. Anybody would like to make a question? Emilio, and then Paulo Prado after that.
Hi, first of all, I'd like to apologize for my late arrival, Marc. I should be starting in this panel, but as I have a lot of things to do at the same time in the several sessions, I'm currently the coordinator of the marketing division. So I would like to thank you so much for accepting to participate in this panel. I really appreciate for your availability, your time using here, and your great presentation was really great. I would like even to do some comment about that. I'm working with technology, market, consumer behavior related to technology, but I have been read many articles related to this kind of both what we're talking about, love and rage, that they become some kind of like retaliation and backlash for consumers. And for the other side, we have the devotion that consumers have. They protect even some problems in the company because they love so much. So everything you told you about us is very important. The quantity of possibilities we have in the research about the antecedents of what are bringing the consumers to this kind of scenarios, why they are rating or loving. And I saw some research here in Brazil that when people have some kind of dissatisfaction about the expectations, it's not something that bring him to have the kind of rate. But what happened? The major problem we have in Brazil is the post-sale service that is inefficient. So they improve the dissatisfaction of consumers when they have some problem previously with the purchase, and this becomes some kind of perceived injustice for consumers, and they don't want anymore just doing a kind of boycott. Boycott is so simple. No, I want to retaliate. I have to use the word of mouth, the online, the negative online word of mouth. I have to damage the image of the company, because the problem is not the product I purchase, but the problem is that when I try to get some result, some solution, they even getting worse our relationship. So your presentation was great. I saw all this kind of connections. I have read, I have even inserted some research. Thank you very much. And if you have something to comment about that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilio. Thank you.
Okay, Marc, would you like to make some comments about it, or we can go to the Paulo Prado question?
Well, I mean, so I agree with Emilio, you know, about all the retaliation actions, and you know, it's feeling of betrayal, you know, but I think not everybody behaves this way. I think what would be really interesting to do is look at personality traits, and does personality, because different people deal with conflict differently. You know, some use more, what I say, take a flight strategy, avoidance, right? And that's the same with interpersonal problems, right? If you have interpersonal conflict, some go more into avoidance mode and some go more into attack mode. And it would really be interesting. And I think those people behave, my hypothesis would be they behave similarly to brands. And so it would be interesting actually to really dig into that of psychological segmentation and personality, and how which personality trait, not all probably, would influence such kind of behavior. So that's just one of the comments, because Emilio made many good points. So that's just one thing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marc. Paulo?
Thank you, Marc, for your presentation. Very, very helpful, insightful. That you have since the first time I met you in Rollins, in the second brand relationship colloquium that you. But one thing that I was thinking on your presentation is that nowadays we are in the world very polarized. It's very polarized. There's a lot of different perspectives and fightings and between groups and so on. And normally some interest groups are pressuring brands to take positions about ideological perspectives and so on. And from your presentation, I think if you go to the wrong way, you probably have a lot of problems on ideological perspectives. So you probably rise your hating index on this positions and so on. And I don't know if you have some thoughts about how the brands could behave on this kind of new world of like polarized ways, and what they should avoid and why they should improve the brand political perspective on these things.
Marc, just before you answer the question, I just want to complement it, because brand activism and corporate advocacy are two subjects that are increasing in the marketing literature. And you show that the ideological antecedent of brand hate is one of the most important. But we don't have something related to brand love. So I would like to understand if there are some articles that said that it's not symmetrical impact. Sometimes you have more impact from the side that you are incongruent with the ideological position. And when you match the ideological position of the brand, sometimes the effect is not so strong. So just to complement the question from Paulo Prado, I think it's a very interesting subject for debate.
Absolutely, it's a loaded question. So where do I start? So I think first, Paulo, to quickly take your last point about love and the imbalance. There is a concept. I actually just finished a paper about brand addiction, right? So I think there is extreme emotion where actually love can become negative, right? If you go in an addictive behavior, it's like a tipping point, because then it's impacting your welfare, your self-esteem, your overspending. But anyway, so there is some part, even a more extreme case of love, but which then goes into the negative aspect. Coming to Paulo's statement about, polarizing brands politically, I think that's definitely something interesting to look at. I think it might relate to co-branding, right? Where brands then are put into boxes of, we support that or this. So I think that there's a lot of research to be done. I'm not sure there's a lot out there I'm familiar with looking at having to take sides. I think some brands don't try to take sides, but some do. And I could, for example, think of celebrity brands, right? When Tiger Woods had, it's a brand, a personal brand, but still, you know, or Djokovic, right? So when they have sponsors, co-branding, like do they, and they are, in this case, Djokovic with, you know, vaccination or not vaccination, right? Is, you know, either you're for or against. And so it was interesting. Some brands stick with him, and some, I think Lacoste and other, are discussing, you know, say, listen, it's not going to work. So I think that's definitely something which is interesting to do more research of that, and then what's the impact on, in this case, the personal brand, but also the corporate brand, right? Do you support that? And more brands get asked, you know, to take a side, but they don't want to take a side. So I know I don't have a definite answer to that, except I think it's an interesting avenue to do research, especially today where, you know, if you look at the internet, the way ideas are polarized, you know, I think the deep fake news, I mean, all that stuff relates to where, you know, people are not willing to change their opinion on certain things. And I think that will be the interesting part of looking at how brands should deal with that polarized world. Just one more last thing. I'm not sure you're familiar with brand hijacking. That's another interesting topic to look at, where actually brands like Lego, you know, used it against BP in a video. You can Google it, brand hijacking, where, you know, certain brands are used against their will for a cause or for making a statement. So I think that's something. There's one book out which I think is even written, Brand Hijacking, which would be interesting to look at. So I think there's a lot of things related to politics, branding, positioning, and taking sides. Thank you.
Great, Marc. We can go to Marcelo.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity for the question. Congratulations for your presentation. Very interesting, the topics on love, hate, and forgiveness. And actually, my question has to do with what you just said about hijacking, brand hijacking. And I would like to address the question on brand protection. And to be more specific, I am from finance. And I am dealing with startups, venture capital, so small companies. So first of all, could you give your point of view of these three stages: love, love, hate, and forgiveness? Corporations is different compared to startup and venture capitals, let's say small companies, and they are important when you talk about an IPO. So this is a first point. And second point, what would you address about intellectual property rights? So protection, brand protection. If there is a competitor trying to use a brand similar or equal, or I don't know, and somehow may ruin your brand, what would you do? And law enforcement is somehow might be slow or not so effective with an internet. And so what could you please share some thoughts and on this topic? I hope I was clear, but I really did enjoy what you said. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Marcelo, for that. Well, it's again a loaded question. So obviously I would need to, which we don't have time, ask much more questions specific to the case. It seems you have a very specific case in mind, or cases in mind, to I think fully, adequately and correctly answer your question. But what I'm hearing you saying is, like, there's a startup companies or small companies, how they can protect them. Now, do you mean protection in terms of legal trademark protection, or, you know, IP in terms of patent copyright, or
no, the legal side? Sorry, the legal side, of course, this is not the point here, because that has to do with lawyers. But of course, a company must be careful and see all the legal protections and that the patent office, and that's not the point I am talking really about. But again, you have a legal actions, but also you have marketing actions. This is what I would like you to address, if you can, when you relate to brand protection in these three stages for startup and venture capital.
Okay, so well, so the brand protection in terms of for the consumer's mind, like they get confused with other brands, or do you also ask competitors' brand trying to hurt your own brand? Is that what you're saying? So active, okay, and those, yes. Okay, and those competitors' action are targeting, or for some misinformation about the startup small company, or even next to legal actions, right? Trying to destroy them, but also just trying to hurt their image, like negative campaigning. Is that what you're referring to?
It can be actually no intent. They just want to go together with you, let's say. So it's not the hijacking side. And I would like to know if there is already work on this, because I think that your speech was more corporate issues, so big companies. And I am perhaps suggestions also for future work for small companies. They are trying to go up to strive in a very competitive market, and they would like to be loved, and someone else comes and also would like to profit from this scenario. Have you any experience with this? Have you any work with this, with startup, venture capital?
So yes, so okay, you know, it's a very low. So yes, I have one case is right now happening. It's not where competitors try to have a bandwagon effect, right? We could almost call it brandwagon effect.
Yes, that's it. That could be a very good word, brandwagon effect.
Yeah, I just made this up. I don't know, maybe it exists. But anyway, so, but in my case, for example, it's a Swiss chocolate company called Swiss One. Right, it's a one-year-old company who does chocolate, not in a triangle, but in a shape of the Australian theatre in Sydney. But what happened is before they launched it, so as an example of attack, Crafts International, who owns Toblerone, and again, Toblerone is pronounced Toblerone, not Swiss One, right? The same ending. But Toblerone chocolate is the word between Mr. Tobler, who created the chocolate, and the ending of Garone, which is, I think, the Italian word for a type of nougat. So it's a descriptive name, but now they sue them. They lost, by the way. They sued this little Swiss company, which is a year old, which is called Swiss One, right? For first, you know, trademark infringement. Then they attacked them on design of the chocolate. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail. I wrote actually a case study about them. But the point is, so
they lost.
So Kraft's Food lost the first lawsuit, which was 60 pages long. I have it in, you know, I have all the documents because I know the CEO. So they lost it for multiple reasons, which is, you know, we can maybe do that bilaterally. And then they go, so the second lawsuit was now not about the brand name, because clearly one is pronounced Swiss One, which has the ONE ending, is different than Toblerone. They lost the aspect of the design of the chocolate, because it's not that, like the Toblerone is, the package is a triangle and the product is a triangle. Their product, if you want to look it up, you can Google Swiss One chocolate, is actually like an espresso chocolate. But now the second lawsuit they do, because they want to get rid of the competitor, so Crafts, is now going to consumer perception, where their argument is, oh, but there's a consumer confusion and you want a bandwagon in on the name of Toblerone by having this startup, right? And they did a market research with, the journal JFK, the market research company. And so we actually did the counter research and say, has nothing to do with this and so forth. But so while this doesn't fit perfectly your example, but it is a real case where a major billion-dollar companies just try to destroy a small startup, right, on every asset. And so come back to your question about brand protection, right? Obviously, their first defense was legal protection, but in the second defense was they had a different product, right? So in terms of brand defense, instead they have a different product, different package, different positioning. They are sold at 7 Swiss francs versus 2.5, 3 Swiss francs. So their positioning, so probably one answer would be brand protection you might achieve by just being positioned differently or uniquely compared to your competitors. I think the more closer you're positioned, right, the more difficult it becomes to differentiate yourself and protect yourself. So I think one aspect could be, to be just being different. I know that's not the full answer.
I loved your case. Really, thanks very much. Do you have a reference of your work?
Yeah, it's an Ivy case, but I can send you here the link on the chat.
Oh, that would be great.
And there's an Ivy case that I wrote here. This is the company. They're also different in many other aspects. For example, their package is biodegradable. So if you look at here, you can look at, so the packaging as it looks like Nespresso. So the fear was Nespresso sues them for the package, which they don't. But their package is also unique. Not only their taste is different for multiple reasons. They don't have palm oil and sugar extract. Their package is aluminum biodegradable. So it's just multiple ways to protect themselves and position themselves differently.
Great. I would like to give
thank you very much.
One last question before we start talking about the track of brand management here in the Congress. Marcus, I saw that you have raised your hand. I don't know if you want to make a question.
Like a question and a commentary. Marc, about this relation that you commented in forgiveness, I know that there's a line in psychology that works with that. And there are studies about the mediation of forgiveness. Do we have something in the area of CBR, in the mediation of forgiveness, brand forgiveness? Do we have any studies that you know of that are being made in the moment?
So you mean, sorry, so you mean, the question is, are there any current research going on about brand forgiveness?
Like what is mediating this relationship of forgiveness? So what I'm talking about is about constructs that could impact our emotions, that could impact that. I'm seeing something in Frontiers of Psychology, some studies are emerging. There's one for 2020 that just made that. And that seems to me something a little interesting to develop and elaborate the construct that you are proposing of forgiveness.
So I think the aspect of forgiveness in business is really rather new, right? A few years old. I mean, go on Google Scholar, you see my paper and a few others. There are a couple of very good papers who start, but I think there's so many things which we just don't know, right? And it's a key emotion, right, of repairing, if at all. And so I think that any model, for example, could look at extend the model with controllable and non-controllable transgressions, right? For example, if a company does something wrong, right, and it's not their fault, we're much more likely to forgive than if it's their fault. Like, let's say, if the electricity in a hotel goes out during hurricane season, people have no problem, right? They forgive that because it's out of their control. However, if you go to a hotel and the AC and the electricity doesn't work in a nice weather situation, they are not unhappy, right? So I think that would be one thing to look at. And the second would be also look at the response strategies, right? I just finished a paper with Seed, which got accepted about, justice theory, right? So how you deal, if something negative happened to you, you know, does the company apologize? Do they give you some money back? Do they just listen to you? Most of the time, people just want to be listened. It's like when you complain, right? You're just sitting, you know, validating, mirroring, validating, empathizing, right? It's a simple concept from psychology. Just doing that, most people calm down, right? So I think that would be something to extend of, you know, a simple thing like, I hear you, or I understand you're upset, in an email from a company or client already reduces the tension, right? So that would be something. The third would be, how does forgiveness change over time? You know, I'm not aware of much research there. Is, you know, how does it affect over time? And a third one is among personality types and cultures. You know, it would be like, it would be fun to do like a multicultural analysis of brand forgiveness across multiple countries and just look at the culture dimensions as well as personality. So that's the few things I can think of. Another final thing is, there's no real brand forgiveness scale. All right, so let's do a brand forgiveness scale. I mean, I have it on my to-do list, but yeah. So I think that there's a lot of exciting and important stuff, because again, all companies deal with transgressions, one or the other, right? Whether it is Toyota who has to recall cars, my guess is with EV cars, a lot of companies have recalls because they're so new products. And how does a core company deal with those things on a mass scale?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have marked some subjects that we need to talk about our Congress. We will talk about the brand subject here in our research. The main point here was bring Marc to promote the idea to research about brands and brand consumer relationship. And I would like to, with Marcus, I would like to show some numbers in order to ask our colleagues to submit papers for our track and show how important is the area and the track and the subjects that we are researching now. So I would like to invite you to just understand a little bit about what we are doing here in Brazil related to brand. Okay. So Marcus, would you like to share our presentation?
Me?
No, Marcus.
Yeah. It's me, because I'm really sorry. The name's really close. There's this professor who's dead now, Roger Layton. I had a relationship with him. He always called me Marc, so sometimes it crosses. Is that appearing now, Paulo?
Yes, I'm seeing the slides. So you can change the slides for us. Okay, next one. So here we have a little history about the brand track here in our Congress. As we can see, we grow a lot in the last years. We grow 7% from 2020 to 2021. And we are the fourth more important, not important, but the track that has more articles published and presented here in the Congress. This year, we also grow a little bit, 70% in terms of papers that were presented in our Congress. So I think we are in the right path, and probably when we bring someone like Marc to talk about all the opportunities to research in branding, we will increase a little bit more our track. Next one. Marcus, can you change the slide? Okay, so we also have an increase in number of authors that are publishing here in our Congress. We started with 26 authors in our track. Last year we have 50 authors, and this year we increased to 58. We hear some of the researchers that have more articles in our track. The next one. And I would like everybody to submit papers in these subjects. So we have opportunities to publish in our Congress in customer-based brand equity, brand identity, image and reputation, brand hierarchy and architecture, brand equity and marketing mix, brand and digital integrated market communication, brand activism, advocacy, and corporate social responsibility. We also have some papers related to brand community, self-connection, engagement, and love, and also relates to something that Marc just have said, brand transgression and the outcomes related to brand hate, brand avoidance, and also some research about brand hypocrisy. Okay. Here we have an idea about the increase from two important papers that have brand and the main subject. So the Journal of Product and Brand Management, as we can see, the index in the last years have increased a lot. So the age index is 90, but you can see from 1999 to 2020 how important the journal have become in the last years. We have a second journal that is specific for brand in the next slide. It's the Journal of Brand Management. The age index is a little below the Journal of Product and Brand Managed, but it's also a Q1 journal and also have increased his importance in the last years. So this is to reinforce the importance of our track and the subject for the marketing area. Marcos.
So we have this database from thesis and dissertations, master and PhD in Brazil. It's called Biblioteca Digital Brasileira de Teses e Dissertações, and I accessed the data over there to check out by keywords related to CBR to see how many theses and dissertations that we have that are related and that at least mention or develop the topic. To my surprise, we found a significant number starting in the 2000s with one. We have identified 117 theses and dissertations in Brazil. And the interesting part of that is that we have a healthy number of a master thesis and also some PhD thesis, which represents the growth of this field of research and marketing in Brazil. So when we look at the universities that are registered, that we're coordinating these theses and dissertations, we can see that we have a nice distribution being concentrated, of course, in the axis of the South and São Paulo. However, we also have some other universities from all over Brazil that are working on that, and hopefully we're going to have even more in the next years. So when we look at Cielo, and Cielo is the Brazilian database, but when we make research on Cielo by the keywords related to CBR, we can also find articles in Spanish. So this data is interesting because it complements with a different view, a view from the South, data from Scopus or Web of Science. We can see that in the last few years, 2019, 2020, 2021, we have 6 publications, a growth that's specific for articles published more in the periphery, less in venues that are indexed by Scopus and Web of Science. So that also shows a growth in research in this area, specifically in these two languages. And when we look at Web of Science and looking at consumer brand relationships, we can see that we have a lot of publication there in the field of business and also management, which is our main field over here. You guys can see how representative it is. It's growing up. Marc already talked about that. And this movement, we can see also by year over here. I would call your attention to the blue box when we can see that we have the biggest publication yet last year with 66 articles identified. Also 2020. So this field is very healthy, is growing. It's interesting, something that we can work on. So lastly, also looking at 1,637 documents from a research on Scopus that I made based on main keywords related to CBR. We can see here the main authors. You guys can see on red on the right side, Marc, which presented to us today. Very brilliant, by the way. And in this one, we can see a correlation of the main authors in the field that are being cited. So I guess this is our presentation. We did not want to get too much time on it, but I guess this shows up and proves that this is a field that's very, very alive and a field that has some promising areas and venues to publish. Paulo, I will leave to you to close the section.
May I say something?
Of course.
Just very quickly to everyone here in this group. It is always good to publish in a field which is growing, because the likelihood to be cited is much higher than in an established field, right? It's like increasing your sales in an increasing market is so much easier than increasing your sales in a stagnant market. To increase your sales in a stagnant market, you have to take market share away. And so the point is, if you want to be cited a lot and it's a growing field, you have a much higher likelihood because there's not much research done and people cite each other, as well as the time to market to publish those topics are much shorter because there's a need for research. So that was just my, just from a publication strategic point of view, it's good to be in a field which is extremely growing and has so many avenues of research.
Thanks for your talk. I really agree with you. I would like to invite Emilio to close the section, but before that, I would like to really thank you. It was a pleasure to have you here. And the topics that you just talk about, brand hate, brand love, brand forgiveness, they are very interesting. Emilio, would you like to make your comments and close the section?
I'd like to ask first to Marcus to take off the presentation. You can see everybody here in this session. And I'd like even to, if you have more time, if you would like to make more questions, if someone would like to do some comment or make some question before we concluded, we still have some time. So I think feel free to talk here.
So if we have some time.
Oh, thank you, Marc, so much for sharing your presentation.
I just shared the presentations in case you want that. I'm happy to share. The sharing is caring. The more we share, the better it is. And there's also a link to where I took the empathy model and the overall model to the book. And so if you're interested to do any research, anyone, I'm not sure I have always time, but I'm always will find at least time to respond and to help if I can be. And again, thank you for thinking about me and inviting me, and for organizing this great event.
Thank you so much, Marc, and thank you also. I'd like to thank you Marcos, Paulo, Baptista, and Cidi for organizing this with you. So I believe that was really nice discussion. We have a lot of works to do, even together. And here in Brazil, we have some particular trends that sometimes companies don't perceive how important it is to manage their brand. And this kind of discussion is very, very, that it's so many managerial implications to be used and to be shared with the society. So I appreciate for that. So if nobody anymore has any kind that just insert here, Marcus, can you open your camera? Can take a picture of the session here. Okay, so I will take a picture of the May 1st for the group, for the conference. Let me save here. And now I will try to put everybody here, the whole conference. Just a minute. So everybody that is in the session, if you can open your camera, you take a picture of everybody together, and I will save it for our history about the EnANPADs and our event, what we had developed here. I really appreciate for all participation. The audience was good. We got many people participating. So, okay. Who did it? Did it. All right, thank you again, Marc, Sid, Paulo, Marcos. I appreciate for your time, I appreciate for the audience, and I hope to see you soon, maybe, or who knows, in presence, not anymore in virtual, because we have to move, we have to take a real break coffee together. So thank you very much. See you in the next sessions. Marc, thank you so much for availability. See you.
Thank you, Marc. Nice to meet you again.
Have a good weekend.
See you.
The same.